ARK Space ETF is the topic of today's presentation, and we're going to talk about the ARK Space Exploration and Innovation ETF under the ticker ARKX. So when it comes to space stocks, space happens to be one of the 12 categories of stocks that we cover here at Nanalyze, and you can see here this is a breakdown of the category weightings for our 37 stock portfolio. And you'll notice there's cannabis in there. That's something that had a lot of interest from newbie retail investors, so we picked up on that theme. So really it's 11 tech themes plus cannabis. Now when it comes to where we're allocating our money, you can see we're overweight AI, IoT, life sciences, and a little bit overweight computing, but we're significantly underweight three themes at the top there, one of those being space. And that's largely because there aren't a lot of opportunities to invest. So the problem with investing in space is that it's been a difficult theme because we can't find decent pure play space stocks. Now, there are plenty of failed space SPACs that came about, and we wrote about quite a few of those. Many we avoided, let's say nearly all, I think, of all these space SPACs that came out. We only own one, and we like one other space SPAC, and then we also like one other space stock of the 27 that we cover. So this is taken from our tech stock catalog. It has 460 tech stocks. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It has a Refinitiv lookup, so it automatically pulls in data like market cap, and we calculate our simple valuation ratio. It's got a lot of data in there, but I just took a snapshot here of the sheet, and you can see there's a SPAC flag there. I can't see what column that is. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or ninth column refers to SPAC. So you filter there on yes, and you would get all the different SPACs. So what does ARK define as space exploration? Well, it's pretty broad. So they're looking at three categories here: orbital and suborbital aerospace companies, so like satellites and launch vehicles; enabling technologies. This is where things might get a little bit vague. So AI, robotics, 3D printing, energy storage; and then aerospace beneficiaries. So agriculture, internet, GPS drones, and eVTOL. Now, when we look at the top 10 holdings of ARK's Space ETF seen here, we see that's pretty heavily weighted. So these 10 companies make up 56% of the ETF. So if you find any of these to not to be compelling, let's say you find most to be not very compelling, the ETF then becomes not very compelling, and that's where we're sitting. So our initial thoughts are we invest in pure plays, and there's really a lack of pure play space stocks in ARK's top holdings. Of those 10 firms, we'd probably only consider one a true space stock, and that would be Iridium. Even then, it's more of an IoT stock when you look at where revenues are coming from, and we believe that they're facing some serious threats from Starlink. Now, one of the things that you can do when you're looking at a particular theme, this is very educational, is go out there and find all the ETFs that are addressing it. So you could do this for IoT or FinTech or AI, whatever you choose. Then see out of the top holdings for each one how many of these investment firms that are putting out these ETFs agree on the names. Now, you would think it should be pretty clear cut. So if you have an understanding of the global industry classification standard, then you would know that to create an industry ETF is very easy. And of course, there may be some variations, but you'll largely see the same names because it's pretty clear. Now, when it comes to defining space, because it's so new and because a lot of these SPACs have been total shit, there's not a lot of selection for these fund managers to choose from. So they often times stretch their definition of what consists of space stocks. So you see here that in green, that's the only stock that all three of these firms believe is a space stock as a group. And that we'd say that appears to be a universally accepted space stock. And the only other names here that are common between ETFs would be Trimble. You see that's in ARK's ARKX, and the Procure UFO ETF in the top three holdings there. And then between the Spider Kensho ETF, Rocket there, ROKT, and UFO, you see that both of those firms believe that Rocket Lab should be at the top when it comes to weighting in positions 1 and 2 there respectively. So we look at Iridium. This is, everybody agrees, a pure play space stock. Indeed it is. They're building a constellation of satellites and then selling services after deployment. High upfront costs with rewards down the line. This is similar to what geospatial imaging firms are doing. Planet is an example of a company that launches satellites, takes pictures, and then sells them. Iridium failed the first time around. They declared bankruptcy in 1999 after taking on too much debt, and now they're back at it. We did a piece. I'll link to that in the description of this video, and we've written in-depth research pieces on most of these space companies, especially the space SPACs, because they're quite popular. Now, one thing that many of these companies are downplaying is the threat that Starlink poses to their business model. Starlink's very disruptive, we believe, while Iridium is targeting mainstream use cases. Another stock that's worth a look for sure, it's a stock we love, which means we hold it. We don't classify it as a space stock. We believe it's more IoT, is Trimble. And this is a top holding in ARKQ, their autonomous technology ETF as well. They do location, GPS, and navigation solutions. Interesting company. They're sort of structured like a conglomerate. And yesterday's piece touches on the conglomerate discount, and it's certainly worth a watch. But Trimble solutions organizations can use them to capture accurate spatial data and transform it into intelligence. It's an interesting company for sure. Then when you look at what else ARK is holding, 40% of their top 10, 40% of the weighting would be around these companies: Kratos, AeroVironment, and L3 Harris and Joby. Drone stocks here, some are really defense stocks. So Kratos builds stuff that kills people. AeroVironment makes defense drones. L3 Harris is a defense company. That's not what we're looking for exposure to. And we've covered this before many years ago, but the difference between the disruptive appeal of drones versus drones that kill people, which have been around for a very long time. As for Joby and the eVTOL thesis, we've written extensively about eVTOL. It's too speculative, so we don't invest pre-revenue at all. It doesn't matter. Well, there are some exceptions to that perhaps in the gene editing space, because you need to make those exceptions if you want exposure to gene editing. But commercialization for Joby by 2024 seems very optimistic. That's the last time we looked. That's next year. They have regulatory and safety hurdles to cross. The cost competitiveness with a taxi is a long way away, and they have a pilot shortage problem they need to deal with until autonomy is achieved. So Joby isn't a firm that we would consider investing in. As for 3D printing in space, this seems a bit of a stretch for ARK to hold Print, their passive 3D printing ETF, as a top holding. Hopefully they're not charging double fees. I'm sure they aren't there. They take that into account. But it just seems rather weak. I mean, there are several applications for 3D printing in space, so lightweight rocket parts, of course, that help improve fuel costs. As satellites can be manufactured using 3D printing, it's useful for prototyping across many industries. One thing that certainly makes sense is that it would give astronauts access to an almost unlimited supply of auxiliary parts without relying on resupply from Earth. So that's certainly a compelling point to make regarding this thesis. But when it comes to space, we wouldn't see 3D printing as being something that's that would be a pure play stock that we're interested in. As for 3D printing itself, as we mentioned earlier, there aren't a lot of good opportunities in that space either. And of course, the long shot here is using additive manufacturing to make structures on the moon. Now, when it comes to the rest of the names in ARK's top 10, we think these are a bit of a stretch. You have Komatsu. They make heavy machinery. They may benefit from connectivity that satellites offer. Well, so would John Deere and other equipment manufacturers, perhaps Caterpillar. You have Teradyne. This is actually a stock we're holding. We love Teradyne. We've held it for a long time, but we're looking to replace it because the industrial robotics exposure that we're getting there, it's one of those skate to where the puck will be situations. It's just not happening. So then that brings us to UiPath, and we're not really sure what the space connection is here. I mean, ARK has a tendency to hold certain stocks over multiple ETFs, and we did a recent piece on ARK's top 10 favorite stocks, and UiPath is one such stock where they hold it across multiple ETFs. And again, this just speaks to the fact that there just aren't many space stocks out there. So we're all about pure plays when it comes to investing in any theme. We don't find the ARK Space Exploration and Innovation ETF to be very compelling. Of the top 10 holdings, only one or maybe arguably two are true space stocks. The only space stock we love didn't make the cut. It may still be early days to invest in space. It's very compelling. It's an easy thesis to understand, which is why it draws a lot of newbies. But unfortunately, there aren't any good space ETFs out there, and ARK's is no exception. Now, I'm going to put up another video here for you to watch. But first, please click the blue Nanalyze logo on the right, subscribe to our channel, and then watch this next video. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this today.